Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for what might be the most radical strategic shift we've ever discussed in the world of digital presence. For decades, really, the fundamental law of SEO, it's been governed by one simple metric: the keyword.
That's right.
We've chased volume, analyzed explicit search data, lived and died by what people typed into the search bar. But what happens when the intelligence behind that search bar, the algorithms matures past the point of just literal interpretation?
Yeah, what happens then?
What happens when they start caring far more about what you mean than, well, just what you say?
Well, we are looking at a complete architectural overhaul today. It's about moving content optimization away from simple targeting, really, and into a realm of organized, integrated, and verifiable systems of meaning.
Systems of meaning, okay.
This is semantic SEO. And based on the specialist analysis we've absorbed, adopting this strategy requires something almost terrifying for veterans in the field: the outright abandonment of core traditional tactics. Things like keyword research, volume analysis. They're out.
Wow, okay. Abandonment. That's huge. Our source material is rich today. It comes from an SEO specialist and author who isn't just theorizing about this, they're actively defining the operational blueprint. And what makes this deep dive unique, I think, is how this specialist draws on fields we rarely associate with marketing.
Right, like linguistics.
Exactly, linguistics, and also the rigorous discipline of library science, or information architecture, as some might call it.
Yeah. Biblioteconomia, information science. It's fascinating stuff.
So our mission today is to understand this inside-out shift. Why does connected data suddenly matter more than keyword lists? And why is building your own knowledge architecture potentially the only path forward? Okay, let's unpack this.
All right, so let's start with the definition. What is semantic SEO? At its most fundamental level, it's a strategy focused on the deliberate construction of verifiable meaning.
Verifiable meaning. Okay, how?
It's achieved through the meticulous alignment of concepts across all your digital assets.
Yeah.
So everything from, say, a small social media post to the deepest technical documentation on your website. The purpose is achieving conceptual authority, not just, ranking for one specific phrase.
That distinction feels paramount. You're basically shifting the goalposts, aren't you? It's not, how do I rank #1 for blue widgets anymore. It's more like, how do I establish that my entire site is the definitive high-quality source of knowledge about the whole concept of widget manufacturing and everything related to it?
Precisely. And the payoff is pretty direct. It helps the search engine algorithms, the actual underlying infrastructure of Google, Bing, others, to better understand the true quality, the comprehensiveness of your content.
And when the algorithm gets it, really understands it.
Well, when the algorithm understands the content deeply, and it recognizes its internal consistency, its logical structure, it qualifies those documents as high quality. And that naturally increases their presence in the search engine results pages, the search repeat. It sort of happens automatically as a result of that understanding.
Okay, but how does that mechanical understanding happen? It sounds a bit like magic, but our sources are saying it's more like engineering. It's driven by structured data.
Oh, it absolutely is engineering, pure and simple. This strategy operates via robust metadata provision. It's really about generating sense and, crucially, semantically connecting all your individual data points.
So you're taking raw stuff, just text maybe, and giving it structure.
You're transforming raw, often disorganized text into logically relevant information. And this connectivity, this network of meaning, is the mechanism that resolves the inherent ambiguities you always find in natural language, especially when a user expresses a specific search intent.
Right, because people don't always search in perfectly clear terms.
Not at all. Their intent might be fuzzy, or the words they use could mean multiple things. Semantic SEO helps the engine figure out the real intent.
Okay, now let's tackle the elephant in the digital marketing room, because this is the part, I think, that's going to make some veteran SEOs really uncomfortable, maybe even panic.
I know where you're going with this.
The source material is absolutely uncompromising on this point, right? The operational incompatibility between the old way and this new way. It says you cannot mix traditional keyword research with this semantic approach.
Yeah, that's the single most radical takeaway, I'd say. Semantic SEO does not use standard keyword research. It doesn't use search volume analysis or, any of those conventional, explicitly data-driven old techniques.
But wait a second. If I'm an SEO manager listening to this, my entire annual budget might be tied to the projected search volume of, say, 3 main keywords. If I just abandon that data, what do I tell my boss? How do I justify my job using the metrics everyone currently understands? Doesn't that make it almost impossible?
That is a brilliant and honestly a necessary challenge to raise. The author stresses that any attempt to sort of reconcile traditional keyword volume hunting with a true semantic SEO approach is, well, fundamentally flawed. They are like oil and water
Because.
because they target different dimensions of language. Traditional keywords look at the explicit representation, the word itself, how often it's typed. Semantic SEO deals with the implicit sense, the underlying meaning and context. You have to replace the metrics, not try to shoehorn the old ones into the new strategy.
Okay, so if we remove search volume, the explicit thing, we can count what metrics actually take its place. How do we measure success if we're targeting this implicit sense?
We pivot entirely. So instead of looking at external data points like search volume, we focus intensely on internal quality and connectivity. New metrics start to emerge.
Like what?
Things like the conceptual saturation of your defined knowledge domain, the robustness of the internal knowledge graph relationships you've built, the alignment score of your entity definitions against, say, established benchmarks. Success isn't measured by how many people typed the explicit phrase anymore. It's measured by how completely we've answered the entire conceptual space surrounding the user's likely implicit intent. The idea is, if we own the concept, the relevant traffic will follow.
It's a shift from quantity of searches to maybe quality of concept fulfillment, right? I can see why the incompatibility is absolute now. If I'm worried about hitting a 5,000 search volume target for some generic phrase, I'm probably going to dilute the specific, deep, connotative meaning that the algorithm actually needs to see in this new model.
Exactly. You'd be optimizing for the wrong thing. And this clarification is critical because there's so much confusion around the terminology. The source points out that terms like Entity SEO or topic cluster are frequently and incorrectly used as if they mean the same thing as semantic SEO.
Right, people throw those terms around. Let's clarify those boundaries then. You obviously need to use entities, right? And you need to structure topics somehow. But those concepts aren't the whole picture here.
No, they're components, but not the whole strategy. The source explains that while semantic SEO absolutely makes necessary use of entities,
Yeah.
the specific things, concepts, people your content talks about, is not restricted to them. It's not fundamentally an entity-oriented approach.
How would you explain the difference simply?
Okay, think of it this way. Entity SEO might ensure the algorithm knows that, say, Pele and Ray do football and athlete of the century all refer to the same person, the same entity. That's important. But semantic SEO goes further. It aims to ensure the algorithm understands that Pele's legacy, as a concept within your overall domain of knowledge, is also conceptually related to global athletic history, perhaps philanthropy, and Brazilian cultural identity.
So it's about the web of connections around the entity, not just identifying the entity itself.
Precisely. Entities are tactical tools. They're crucial parts used within the much larger strategic framework of building verifiable meaning across the entire domain.
Okay, so we've established the what it's about building meaning and the operational necessity ditching the old keyword hunting habits. Now let's really get into the why. Why is this level of linguistic rigor so essential for the modern web?
Right, to really understand the power, the why behind this new strategy, we probably need to ground ourselves a little bit in linguistics. Semantics, according to its formal definition, is the component of language that concerns the meaning of words and, importantly, the complex interpretation of sentences and statements.
Okay.
Its main job, essentially, is to explain the meaning of messages in a way that aligns with how humans actually think and communicate.
Which highlights the historical difficulty for search engines, doesn't it? For years, they struggled to move past simple keyword matching because they were only looking at the individual words, the sort of atomic parts. They lacked the system to grasp the whole picture.
That's a great way to put it. Historically, search algorithms function more like highly efficient dictionaries and indexers, just matching strings. But human language is inherently messy. It's ambiguous. As the source emphasizes, to truly explain the meaning of a message, semantics requires analyzing the entire sentence context. You have to consider all the words and, crucially, their syntactic relationship, how they fit together grammatically. You can't really understand the part without the context of the whole.
And this need for a more holistic understanding must have accelerated dramatically with things like voice search, and especially now with large language models, right?
Yeah.
Because LLMs are fundamentally trained on natural language understanding. The stakes are just way higher now than they were 10 years ago when we were just optimizing for 10 blue links on a page.
Absolutely. The pressure is immense. Citing linguistic work, our source emphasizes that semantics has to be studied as a system that interacts with other systems, like syntax, pragmatics, in the ongoing process of communication and the expression of human thought. The search engine has to try and mimic this human ability to resolve conceptual gaps, to understand implied meaning.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The source uses an incredible practical example, which I think perfectly illustrates the core problem that semantic SEO aims to solve: ambiguity in language. The example is a Portuguese phrase, Alex chutou o pau da barraca.
Right. And literally, if you translate that word for word, it means Alex kicked the pole of the tent.
Just sounds like something about camping.
Exactly. It's the cold, hard dictionary definition, the denotation.
So a legacy algorithm, one focused only on that denotation, the explicit literal meaning, would probably categorize content using that phrase as being about, I don't know, camping gear, maybe outdoor equipment, perhaps even physical violence involving wooden stakes.
Totally plausible for an old system. But the reality for any Portuguese speaker is that this phrase is an idiom. A human reader, or the sophisticated semantic engine we're trying to build content for, understands the figurative meaning, the connotation.
Which is?
This expression indicates that Alex took a radical or tempestuous or maybe just a really rash attitude. He threw a fit, essentially, or caused some kind of major disruption, kicked up a fuss.
Okay, so that figurative meaning, the intent behind the idiom, that's the actual target for semantic optimization. If you publish an article detailing, say, a dramatic corporate merger failure, and you use that idiom in the headline,
Yeah.
the search engine must understand the article is about corporate governance meltdown or failed negotiations or something like that, not what kind of tent Alex was near.
Precisely. And this brings us right to the two key linguistic terms that really drive all these semantic strategies. First, denotation.
The literal meaning.
Yes, the literal, objective, real sense of a word. Basically the definition you find in the dictionary. It's cold, hard fact.
And the other side of the coin.
Is connotation. This is all about context, figurative sense, subjectivity, even creativity. It's the layer of meaning that creates new associations and ideas beyond the literal definition.
Can you give another example, maybe in English?
Sure. Think of the word dog.
Mm.
Denotatively, okay, it's the mammal of the genus Canis. Simple fact.
Right.
Connotatively, though, it could imply loyalty, companionship, or, depending on the context, like in slang, it could mean something negative like that investment was a real dog or a dog of a car. The meaning depends entirely on the surrounding context and implied intent.
That makes sense.
And if we use another common English example just to really cement this idea of ambiguity, consider the word bank.
Okay. Riverbank, money bank.
Exactly. Denotatively, it means the side of a river. It also means a financial institution. Now, if a user searches for something like safe deposits near me, the algorithm needs to understand the implicit meaning. It has to infer they're likely looking for financial information, not, river sediment deposits.
And it does that how? By context.
By assessing the surrounding words, safe, deposits, near me, and likely the broader topic domain established by the user's previous searches or the context of the page they're on.
So wrapping this section up, the goal of semantic SEO is inherently connotative then. We're basically engineering our content, our site structure, everything, to help algorithms understand what we mean, the contextual implicit intention,
Yes.
rather than just registering what we are saying, the explicit literal words on the page.
That's the core idea.
That really feels like the final nail in the coffin for old school keyword stuffing, doesn't it? You're optimizing for intention, not just for the input strings.
Exactly. It's a much deeper game.
Okay, so if resolving ambiguity and targeting connotation is the why, then this inside-out approach our source talks about, that's operational how, this describes a really fundamental structural shift, doesn't it? It almost sounds like it moves SEO out of just the marketing department and potentially into, core business intelligence.
It really is a profound shift in perspective, yeah. The fundamental difference, the thing that sets semantic SEO apart from pretty much all other optimization strategies, including things like Entity SEO or topic clustering, when viewed narrowly, lies in the direction of focus. It moves from the inside out.
Let's just reflect on the traditional approach for a moment, the one most of us know. Historically, pretty much every SEO project was outward focused, wasn't it?
Entirely.
We looked at market trends, we analyzed what the competition was doing, we studied public search volume data, maybe clickstream data, and we chased those external metrics. The content strategy was almost always dictated by external demand and perceived competitive gaps.
And that outward focus, arguably, made almost every business in a sector an echo chamber. Everyone ended up producing similar, or quite diluted, content purely in reaction to what they thought the market wanted or what the competitor ranked for.
Right. Chasing the same keywords?
Yeah. The semantic strategy flips this completely. So instead of looking outside the organization that owns the content, the gaze shifts entirely inward. It focuses first and foremost on the organization's own specialized knowledge domain, its unique expertise, its internal structure of understanding.
Okay, but hold on. That sounds incredibly demanding. You're suggesting that the SEO professional or the team can't just optimize content anymore. They have to immerse themselves completely in the client's world. They need to become like a genuine subject matter expert just to even define the strategy.
Well, yes. Often that's exactly what's required.
Doesn't that make the SEO job vastly more expensive and more complex and definitely more time-consuming? You're essentially demanding that an SEO analyst might need to become almost a certified domain expert in, I don't know, medicine or corporate law or quantum physics, depending on the client. Is that realistic?
It absolutely increases the upfront cost and the time investment. There's no doubt about that. But the argument is that it exponentially increases the long-term relevance and, crucially, the defensibility of the content.
How so? Defensibility.
Because you're building something unique based on genuine internal expertise, structured correctly. It's much harder for competitors to replicate than just chasing the same keywords. You're essentially investing in documenting and structuring your intellectual property, not just churning out marketing copy. And if you don't master the domain internally first, you simply cannot build the kind of knowledge architecture that Google's knowledge graph or similar semantic systems need to recognize true authority.
Okay, I see the argument. So, what's the practical tool for this deep immersion? How do you formalize this internal learning process? You can't just osmosis it.
No, you need structure. The primary tool recommended is the domain of knowledge analysis. This is the formal process of identifying, documenting, and mapping out the set of principal information, the core objects, the processes, the key relationships, everything that is created by and relevant to a specific specialized area of human expertise, which in this context is the client's business or field.
And this analysis requires digging into stuff that SEOs usually never touch, right? Internal documents, maybe.
Exactly. This is not about running a report in some external keyword tool. It involves gathering internal glossaries, maybe reviewing standard operating procedures, SOPs, conducting detailed stakeholder interviews with actual internal experts, engineers, doctors, lawyers, whoever holds the knowledge. It involves studying official internal documentation, defining the precise terminology used within that specific field or organization. You're essentially building a controlled internal vocabulary first, before you even think about external search terms.
The source provides a fantastic anecdote about this, doesn't it? A project started in the highly specialized field of medicine. Can you walk us through why traditional SEO would likely have failed there and how this domain of knowledge analysis became absolutely essential?
Yeah, it's a great example. In that medical project, the goal wasn't simply to write some blog posts about heart health targeting high-volume keywords. That would be superficial. To do it semantically, the team had to learn all the specialized concepts, like the rigorous clinical terms for conditions and treatments, the specific steps in complex medical procedures, the distinct functions of different medical roles within a hospital, the structured strategic pathways of patient care from admission to discharge. The team essentially had to fully appropriate this comprehensive set of medical concepts.
It's just to do SEO?
Just to be able to define the correct semantic relationships between concepts and to ensure that the optimization of individual pages was medically accurate and contextually sound.
Wow. So if you missed a single key relationship in that analysis, like, say, if your content structure treated patient intake forms as a completely separate, unrelated process from the initial diagnosis protocol,
Yeah.
then your whole content structure would be semantically inaccurate, wouldn't it? Even if you happen to use the right keywords on the pages themselves. The algorithm, the semantic one, would eventually sense that disconnection, that lack of coherence.
That is precisely the power and the necessity of the inside-out approach. In that medical case, you must understand the rigorous, defined relationship between, say, cardiac ablation and atrial fibrillation, and an electrophysiology study within the domain of cardiology. If you don't understand those connections internally, you simply cannot create the kind of deep conceptual alignment that a sophisticated semantic algorithm recognizes as expert, high-quality, trustworthy content. You can't fake it.
Okay. So if we connect this to the bigger picture then, This rigorous internal focus, this domain of knowledge analysis, it's like the wellspring, isn't it? It's where everything else originates.
That is the idea.
It generates the entire content structure, it defines the overarching SEO strategy, it dictates the website architecture, it helps formalize the taxonomies and vocabularies you use.
It defines the entities properly.
It defines the entities, and ultimately it blueprints the knowledge graph you want the search engine to understand about you. This is why the structure absolutely must come first from that deep internal analysis, not just from reacting to external search trends.
You've got it. The foundation has to be internal knowledge.
Okay, so we've defined our knowledge domain internally through this deep analysis. Now we need the tools to actually articulate that domain externally in a way that the algorithms can understand. And this brings us back to entities, but maybe more importantly, to that fascinating toolkit being imported from library science.
Exactly. First, let's just quickly nail down the role of the entity itself within this framework. The source provides that really beautiful insight. A word is merely a representative. It's a label for an idea, a concept, or an entity. It is not the thing itself.
Right. The map is not the territory.
Precisely. The entity is the underlying concept. The word is just one possible label we stick on it.
And this is fundamentally how algorithms overcome that ambiguity problem we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about the single unique entity known as Edson Arantes do Nascimento. Can use various labels in your text. Pele, Rei do Futebol, maybe the king of football, athlete of the century. The Google Knowledge Graph, or a similar system, understands these are all just different explicit labels pointing back to the one defined entity.
Yes, entities are the core mechanism for ambiguity resolution in this sense. They are fundamental because they connect those multiple potential verbal representations to a single defined concept within your structured data, or within the search engine's own graph. So, in your domain of knowledge analysis, you must rigorously define every single entity that is relevant to your domain, and then ensure that your content consistently links back to that canonical definition, regardless of which specific label or synonym you happen to use in the prose on a given page.
But this is where the expertise of our source really comes into play, isn't it? Their background isn't just marketing. It's in library science and information science. That seems to be the real game changer here. They aren't just talking about SEO keywords. They're talking about information architecture in the deepest possible sense.
Absolutely. They are explicitly bridging the gap between modern digital marketing and the incredibly rigorous, well-established world of organizing, classifying, and retrieving knowledge, a field that has, in essence, existed for millennia in libraries and archives. This expertise introduces these ancient but proven concepts right into the modern SEO workflow.
And these are concepts we probably need to unpack a bit, not just list them off. We're talking about things like indexation, classification, categorization of information, analysis of domain, which we've discussed, controlled vocabulary, taxonomies, and ontologies. This sounds like the core toolkit of what might be called content engineering rather than just content marketing.
That's a very good way to frame it.
Like chef.
Content engineering. And let's maybe focus on the two heaviest hitters here, because they really define the structure of your site and your knowledge for the semantic engine. Taxonomies and ontologies.
Okay, start with taxonomies. In simple terms, how does a proper library science taxonomy differ from the basic categories and tags we've been using on blogs and websites for the last 20 years?
It's about rigor and hierarchy, mainly. A formal taxonomy is primarily concerned with hierarchy and classification. It's about defining the types of things you have in your domain and how they relate vertically in a parent-child structure.
Like a tree.
Exactly like a tree structure. So in an e-commerce context, for example, a typical website taxonomy might look like apparel shirts, t-shirts, V-neck t-shirts. It clearly tells the search engine what category an item belongs to, allowing the engine to correctly filter, classify, and understand the type of your content.
Okay, so that's classification. It's necessary, clearly, but it still feels relatively static, maybe a bit limited, just putting things in boxes.
It is necessary, but yes, it is somewhat limited on its own. The real power, the real semantic depth, comes in when you introduce ontologies. An ontology is a much more formal system that defines not just the hierarchy, the classification from the taxonomy, but also the complex relationships between different concepts and entities in your domain.
Relationships. Okay, give us a tangible example of an ontological relationship. Using that V-neck t-shirt, how does an ontology make that concept smarter for an algorithm?
Right. So instead of just saying a V-neck t-shirt is a type of t-shirt, which is the taxonomic relationship, an ontology defines richer, more functional, and associative relationships. It might specify things like a V-neck shirt is manufactured using materials like cotton or polyester, linking to material entities, or A V-neck shirt is often purchased by customer profile X, linking it to a defined user segment, maybe the casual commuter. It could also state, a V-neck shirt is a recommended solution for the user problem of needing comfortable, breathable summer attire,
Yeah.
linking product features to user needs.
Ah, okay. So the ontology transforms the simple hierarchy into a functioning network, a web of interconnected ideas. It explicitly defines the properties, the attributes, maybe the constraints, and the behavioral or functional relationships between every important concept you identified in your domain of knowledge analysis.
Precisely. This is how you actively engineer meaning. You're providing the algorithm with a rigorous, formal, machine-readable map of your specialized universe. And when you combine this explicit internal structure, the ontology, with a deep understanding derived from your domain of knowledge analysis, you genuinely move from just optimizing pages to properly engineering content.
And this level of structural rigor, this formal mapping, is exactly what the newest layer of technology really needs to function reliably, isn't it? We're talking about connecting these tried and true library science systems, these taxonomies, and especially these ontologies, with the absolute cutting edge of modern tech. Artificial intelligence, AI, large language models, LLMs, knowledge graphs, and maybe even autonomous agents in the future.
This is the ultimate convergence point, yes. LLMs, for instance, are magnificent at generating fluent, natural-sounding language. But they are also notorious for hallucinating, that is, generating confidently stated but completely factually incorrect answers.
Right, they make stuff up sometimes.
They do, especially in highly specialized or technical domains like medicine or finance or complex law. And why do they do that? Often it's because they lack a rigorous, defined internal structure of truth for that specific domain to ground their probabilistic text generation. They're just predicting the next likely word without necessarily checking against a factual model.
So, by implementing a formal ontology based on our domain of knowledge analysis, we are essentially feeding the LLMs and the knowledge graphs the verified internal truth of our specific domain. We're providing the factual guardrails to prevent that kind of factual drift or hallucination when they talk about our area.
It's exactly. The rigorous definition of concepts, properties, and relationships imported directly from these information science practices acts as the factual backbone, the ground truth. This integration offers a profoundly different and much more sustainable long-term perspective on optimization. You stop just reacting to fleeting search trends in the keyword du jour. Instead, you start building a scientifically sound, internally consistent, and verifiable architecture of knowledge. And it just so happens that the smartest algorithms being developed today are naturally built to recognize, trust, and reward exactly that kind of structured, meaningful information. You essentially give the AI the map it needs to interpret meaning correctly without having to guess. #outro.
Wow. Okay. So, what does this all mean? Let's try and boil it down.
Yeah, let's summarize. I think it means the era of just superficial content churned out quickly to chase keywords and purely reactive keyword hunting. Well, that era is ending, or at least its effectiveness is dramatically waning for serious players. If you, listening, want to embrace this semantic deep dive, you really have to accept 3 fundamental shifts in thinking and practice.
Okay, what are they?
First, you absolutely must be willing to abandon the easy, traditional metric of explicit keyword volume. Instead, you need to focus on new internal metrics like conceptual saturation within your domain and maybe scoring the quality of the relationships you define.
Okay, abandon keyword volume focus. Got it.
Second, you have to really adopt, a mandatory inside-out approach. That means starting every project with a rigorous domain of knowledge analysis of your own organization's unique expertise in internal language. The knowledge comes first.
Inside out, knowledge first. Makes sense.
And third, you must prioritize the active engineering of connotative meaning. You need to focus on conveying the underlying intent and context, using formal structures like taxonomies and more powerfully ontologies to preemptively resolve ambiguity for search engines and AI. You build the meaning structure.
Abandon keywords, inside-out analysis, engineer meaning. It really is a radical intellectual and definitely an operational shift. You're essentially suggesting moving the content operation from being maybe just a tactical marketing function to being a core component of your organization's actual knowledge infrastructure. You're not just writing articles. You're building the digital equivalent of a specialized library or a knowledge base designed for arguably the most powerful patron on the web today, the AI algorithm.
That's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And the integration of these rigorous library science tools with modern AI and LLMs strongly suggests that the future of successful digital optimization isn't really about guessing what people might be searching for next week.
What is it about then?
It's about rigorously, formally, and accurately organizing all the possible relevant knowledge within your defined field or domain, creating that structured map of your expertise.
Which raises a really important final question for you, the listener, the learner, maybe the future knowledge architect. If your job is shifting, if it's no longer just about being a content creator or marketer, but more about being a knowledge engineer, then what specific domain of knowledge is absolutely crucial for your work, your organization? What are the core internal concepts, the key entities, the vital relationships that you need to formally structure and define? Maybe before you even think about what your audience might be typing into Google, think about formalizing that internal framework, because that seems to be where the real sustainable competitive advantage now begins. And that perhaps is where the real deep dive truly starts for you.